Clayton King is our guest, and his book, Stronger. This is his 12th literary effort, 12th book, and man, it's got to be your most transparent, open book. It's biographic and yet so incredibly practical. Thank you for this. It's great work. We've got to get this book into as many hands as we can get this month. The seventh chapter is on vulnerability, and I found, as I read from the first pages, you were incredibly vulnerable. I think you've reached a place in your life where you're just very, very open. There's kind of like nothing to hide, and that's a great place to be. How, through brokenness and humility, have you learned to become stronger? How has vulnerability played into this, where you can just be that open and transparent? I think your subtitle here, How to Open Up When You Just Want to Shut Down. I know what that's like.
When we hurt, we intuitively and reflexively defend ourselves. That's what we do. Animals do it, children do it, adults do it. When something threatens us, we immediately go into defense mode. So it's counterintuitive in a time of pain and hardship, a time of grief, loss, or confusion, to make yourself vulnerable to people when all you want to do is defend against pain. But we have to do it because ultimately that's how we get beyond, that's how we move forward. For me, being vulnerable was part of my healing process. It still is. There really is nothing left in my heart to hide from people. I have poured out my soul in this book. I decided when I was going to tell this story, I felt the Lord gave me an opportunity through my publisher and through the platform He's given me to really showcase His strength. But I knew I was going to have to go to a deep place of vulnerability. So telling my story, what it really did, even though it felt like I was making myself open to pain and open to criticism or open to more hurt, it actually freed me from the burden of carrying all of this on my own. That's what vulnerability does. When we're vulnerable, we're victorious. When we are vulnerable with others about the things that hurt us, the things that cause us confusion, God takes away the weight that we were never meant to bear, that we oftentimes carry, where we feel like we have to project strength, we have to look professional, we have to keep it together, and we have to hold it down. But in reality, when the brokenness really sets in and we're vulnerable about it, we get that heavy burden released off of our shoulders, and it's put in God's hands.
Clayton, you talk in the book about your aunt walks in as you're looking over some, you call them old pictures.
Yeah.
Tell us about the old pictures incident and what that did.
One of the most emotional moments in my life. So I was at my grandmother's house. I was a little kid exploring closets, found a box of old black and white photos from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and there was a picture in there of my grandfather. Yeah. I never met my grandfather. He died of throat cancer before my parents adopted me. But I knew that my dad had a very hurtful place in his heart because of my grandfather, his own dad.
Really?
And so for me, how I learned vulnerability was from my dad. Before my dad died, when I was about 18 years old, I had known for years that my dad was holding this very hurtful place because his dad had walked out on him when he was 10.
Oh my.
But I didn't know any details because no one would talk about it. There was an afternoon at our home in South Carolina during a thunderstorm where for some reason the powers converged and the moment was right, and my dad decided to open up to me and tell me about what it was like to be 10 years old and to watch his dad leave.
Oh.
And for an hour, my dad cried like a baby, told me how he felt unloved.
How old was your dad at the time?
At that point, my dad was about 60.
Think of that.
58 to 60 years old.
Think of that.
Took him that long to be vulnerable with anybody about the pain he had felt because of his father. And then my dad said this, because my father left us and abandoned us, I decided I would never, ever leave my family or abandon you. So the reason why I can be vulnerable now about my pain and my depression and my discouragement and the victory God gave me is because I learned vulnerability from my own father. Even though it took him a majority of his life, 50 years or so, to share that hurtful thing, I found victory through my dad's vulnerability.
And your children will be helped much sooner because vulnerability has come to your life at an earlier age.
That's true.
To be vulnerable, to be open, to be transparent is a very powerful thing. You've done a great work here for the kingdom. It's great work. You need this book. It's incredibly touching. Clayton King is the author, and the heart comes through, doesn't it? You can just see it. What you're experiencing there as you're watching this is happening here on this set. What happens when a life is open and vulnerable and transparent? And think about what God can do in a life that is shaped that way, that we allow God to just use us to be open, to be transparent. You need this book, Stronger. It's going to help you be stronger. How hard times reveal God's greatest power. Clayton King, thanks again, man.
Thank you.